Welcome back. Today I'm at Longshore Cycle Center in Florence, Alabama to pick up my new 2023 YZ250FX. In this video I'm going to cover all the modifications and upgrades I make to it before I ride or race it. So I'm not saying everybody should do it exactly the way I do it. I just set up the bike the way I like it, and I'm going to share that with you in this video. With that said, the first thing I'm going to do is remove all of the stock plastic because I'm saving that for when I sell this bike a couple of years down the road. I'm going to remove the fork tubes and shock. Those are going down to fast lap racing suspension to get revalved and resprung. I like the valving softened up considerably from the stock valving with springs for my weight. Steve at Fast Lap has the formula dialed in for Woods guys on this KYB setup. The stock tubes on these bikes are paper thin, so I'm going to install this IRC heavy tube on the front, and this is about twice as thick as the stock tube. And then I'm going to put Tubliss on the rear. I'm also going to change out the MX-33 tire for an AT81 on the rear. Now this is just a basic tire changing stand, but it works great. It's so much better than wrestling with the wheel on the floor. I'll put a link to this stand and some other tools that I'm using in the video description. Yamaha did start using sealed bearings in these front wheels. They were open for a while. I think they made that change in 22, but that's good. So basically every new dirt bike comes with extremely thin tubes. So you can compare the thickness of the Dunlop tube on the top to the IRC tube on the bottom. I like to run heavier tubes just to avoid pinch flats. That can ruin your race day in a hurry. I like to put a little air in it just to get it to take the shape of the tire. Then I'm going to pull the valve core back out and put it on the rim. I like to use this tubeless installation method even when I'm working with a regular tube. Just easier to me. This is just some armor all to help that go on easier. Now I think I already said I'm going to put an AT81 on here, but I'm going to reuse this tire on the 21 model before it's sold, so it won't go to waste. Now I've done an entire video on how to install Tubliss, so we're going to do this the quick and easy way. There we go. Let's put the tire on the same way. Alright, all set. While I got the suspension and the wheels off the bike, it makes sense to go ahead and check the linkage bearings and the swing arm bearings, make sure they got plenty of grease. Riding in the southeast, there's always a lot of water and mud, and that really does a number on those linkage bearings. So it'll give me peace of mind just to check them and know that they're well greased. I forgot to take the chain guide off, so I gotta do that real quick. Alright, let's check out these linkage bearings. This one was the one that was really on my 21 model. Didn't have much grease, and again, there's not much grease in there. Very little grease in there. I like to pull the bushing just part of the way out to try to keep the bearings from falling out. Some grease in there. Again, not very much grease on this side either. Not a lot of grease in there. Definitely not enough for my liking. Alright, the swing arm is pretty much the same process. There's no better time to put some anti-seize on these chain adjuster bolts to make sure they never seize up in the swing arm. Before I reinstall this, I'm going to replace this chain slider with the one from this TM Design Works kit. So I bought this kit mainly for the chain guide, and this chain guide is better than the factory one in my opinion. The factory chain guide has that aluminum casing on it that bends whenever you hit a rock or a stump or something. It doesn't bounce back as well as these plastic ones. These things are really tough, and you can hit whatever and they'll just bounce back to their original shape. With that, I've got the chain slider, and it makes sense to go ahead and put that on now. Alright, the bike's got a riveted chain, so I have to wait till I put the swing arm back on the bike to put this on. So this lower link's going to be easier to reinstall before I put the swing arm back on. Reinstall this chain roller. Now I'm going to install this No-toil Superflow kit. I made a detailed video about this, and I'll put a link in the video description. No-toil claims there's more power with this kit. That's not the reason I install it. I installed these because it's a better hold down for the filter than the stock setup, and that's really the only reason I use them. I've got 135 hours on my 21 model with this kit, and it's been working great. So while I'm waiting on my suspension to come back from Fast Lap, I'm going to go ahead and install these Flow Motorsports foot pegs. These are my favorite pegs. In my opinion, the stock Yamaha pegs get a little bit too slippery when things are muddy and wet. I've run these Flow Motorsports pegs on 3 different bikes, and I really like them a lot. They got replaceable cleats, and they stay nice and grippy. I got my suspension back from Fast Lap Racing Suspension, so I can get that back on the bike and I can finish up the build now. There are a few other items I need to move over from the 21 model to the 23 model, including my handlebars, my hydraulic clutch, my recluse, my anti-gravity AG801 battery, my seat concept seat, and a few other odds and ends, so I'll get started on that now. Alright, this is the Yamaha stock handlebar, and this is a handlebar I like to run. This is made by Neken, and I'll put that part number in the video description. I like these because they've got a lot less sweep. So you can see how much less sweep they've got than the Yamaha stock bar. Another reason I don't use the Yamaha stock bars is because I like to use these threaded bar inserts, and they don't work in the Yamaha stock bars. It's kind of a thin-walled aluminum, and there's not enough aluminum there to thread in these threaded bar inserts. I'm also going to be installing this Cycra Probend Ultra handlebar clamp mount handguard setup. Before I get too much farther, I'm going to remove my clutch cable and route my hydraulic clutch line through here. It'll be easier to do it now. I get a lot of questions about this Magura hydraulic clutch kit for the Yamaha. I bought this when I first bought my 2021 Yamaha YZ250FX, and it's been great. I've had no problems with it. I've been using it for 140 hours on that bike. I've used it with various different clutches, and I'll talk a little more about that in a minute. I bleed it whenever I bleed my brakes. It's really easy to do. Magura has a bleeding kit that makes it super simple. I made a detailed video about it when I initially installed it, and I'll put a link to that video in the description. Ultimately, what people want to know about this is do you need it? And the answer is no, you really don't need it. It does reduce the pull effort, but only marginally, because it's not necessarily a mechanical advantage. It's really only eliminating the friction that would be in the cable. When I first bought this kit, it was $179, but the kits are going for over $300 now, so I'm not sure I would pay that. I do think the hydraulic mechanism improves the overall clutch feel, and that's a very personal thing. A lot of people have a lot of different opinions about that. A lot of people prefer cable clutches and the feel of that versus hydraulic and whatnot. I've used it with 3 different clutches. I've used it with the stock Yamaha clutch, I've used it with a Henson clutch, and I've used this with the Recluse Radius CX clutch that's on my 2021 bike now that I'm about to move to this bike. And I've used 3 different slave cylinders for each of those scenarios. Magura makes a bunch of different slave cylinder sizes to go with this kit. And the kit comes with a 41mm slave, I think, to use with the stock clutch. And then it comes with a few shims so that you can adjust it within a certain range. The slave cylinders look like this. And when I talk about different sizes of slave cylinders, the size of the slave cylinder is basically referring to the length of this rod. And I bought a couple of different sizes of them. I think I actually had a 35mm slave I was using on the Henson clutch when I was using that, because the shims didn't really let me adjust it into the range I wanted it. In terms of free play on the handlebar and getting it set up just like I like it. To make it work with the Recluse Radius CX, of course, I had to do the internal free play gain adjustment on the Recluse when it was installed, and then I had to end up using a 30mm, I think. I'll look it up to be sure, and I'll put the part number in the description. But the point is, you can pretty much make this thing work with any setup just by ordering a different slave cylinder specific to that setup. Recluse won't tell you how to make this work, and Magura won't tell you how to make this work. It's just a matter of using some common sense, taking some very specific measurements where the clutch actuation arm needs to be, and then ordering the right slave cylinder for the situation. Now, these slave cylinders are about $100 each from Magura, so there's some additional investment in making it work with a custom application, like making it work with the Recluse. For me, it was worth it because I already had the kit. Like I said before, the kits now are around $300. So would I spend $300 and then spend another $100 on a slave cylinder to make it work? I don't know. I don't know if it's really worth $400. I do like it, and it's well worth moving it to this bike for me. I like these ODI Rogue grips in the light gray soft compound. Before I install them, I've got to knock out these ends. I removed the Recluse Radius CX clutch from my 21 model, and now I'm ready to install it in the 23 model. I've never really been a big fan of Recluse auto clutches, but I installed this one in my 21 model to get better Harescramble starts. These bikes start a lot better in gear with the Recluse, and it's really helped me out in the past few races. Alright, this is my first ride on my 2023 Yamaha YZ250FX.